when talking about kind of conflict and needs, it is really important that a need is something that's kind of independent of any person taking any specific action. It's kind of something that exists in me. So I have a need for sleep, whatever happens. I don't necessarily have a need for my roommates to turn the music down. I just have a need for sleep. And so maybe a strategy is that I would ask my roommates to turn the music down. But the need itself is independent of any particular person taking a specific action. And so we call those strategies. If my request is to turn the music down, or to spend more time with me, or to please stop yelling at that person at that protest, there's a strategy there, and there is a need kind of behind it, which might be for sleep, or for respect, or for love, which are these kind of universal things. And a little litmus test to kind of say whether something is really a need or not is this something that I could wish for everyone? Like, do I wish for everyone to have this thing? And that usually can work to say that whether or not something is actually kind of a non-controversial need. Danny asked if we're going to be getting slides for this. I certainly could send them out. Maybe Joanna or Aiden could give me some ideas for how to get that out to people later. Okay. And so now, there we go. So feelings, which we talked about a little bit earlier, are emotions or bodily sensations that provide feedback about our needs. Some of you named a lot of very rich ones early on. Feeling tired, maybe related to a need for rest. Feeling happy, maybe that shows you that your need for connection, for joy, has been met. They're expressly not thoughts, beliefs, opinions, or images. These kind of images can be really useful. They can be really useful to kind of let you know what's going on with you or with another person. But it's really important to not equate them with feelings. Sometimes we'll say, I feel something, like I feel unimportant, I feel judged, I feel abandoned, or even I feel like this whole story. I feel like I'm just the least important person in this room. Might be kind of an image that comes to mind, and really trying to draw a distinction between the feelings and kind of the images that come up. We talk about two basic categories of needs, which are on that little feelings and needs inventory, which are met and unmet needs. And I would love to do a little bit of practice with this, because I think that I could talk to you all day, but nothing would be quite as valuable as trying to practice some of these skills with others. And so if you would like to be in a breakout room, please stay on the call. We're going to be putting people in breakout rooms in a little bit. If you don't want to be in a breakout room, you can drop off the call for a few minutes, and in about 5 minutes or so, people will be in breakout rooms. And so then if you come back on the call, then you won't be put into a breakout room. So this is your invitation to drop off the call in the next few minutes if you don't want to be in a breakout room, and then you can come back. That way we can kind of ensure that we have the right number of people in the breakout rooms, and that those people will be able to participate with each other. So we're going to shoot for groups of like 3. We might add more people in as that calculus changes. Sometimes we have folks that don't have video or audio access. And I'm going to invite you each to speak for something like 5 minutes about a situation that involves another person where there might be a little bit of stress. There might be something like, just like my anecdote about my mom, something that you might kind of want some empathy on, want to be heard on. And I'm also going to ask that you choose something that maybe isn't kind of a 10 out of 10 on an intensity scale. It's something that isn't going to really, really flood you with emotion, but something that's kind of feels like a safe level to practice with, especially maybe with someone who you don't know, and maybe someone who's kind of new to trying something new, at least in this form of communication. So you'll have about 5 minutes per person to speak. You'll speak about a situation that involves another person, and since I am asking you to talk about something like that, I am also asking that folks hold that with care when these are maybe situations, maybe you think you know who someone's talking about. I would just ask that if you're, as much as possible, to hold confidential what gets shared with you, and to just to provide a safe environment for all of that. And once someone shares a little bit about what's going on with them, the other people in the group can try to do what we call an empathy guess, which could be this format, could be, I think the feelings are, is that right? But basically, are you feeling blank because you're needing or wanting blank? So are you feeling sad because you're wanting connection? Are you feeling tired because you really need some rest? Are you feeling upset because you're really wanting more respect in this relationship you're talking about? Something like this with are you feeling with are you needing? And then that's a guess. We can't ever really know for sure what's going on with somebody else. And so the kind of beauty of an empathy guess is that it opens the door for the guess you made to be wrong. And it's absolutely okay to correct, to say, oh, actually, no, I'm not really feeling sad. It's just kind of, it's that I'm feeling, something else, or that maybe the intensity is wrong. Maybe I'm feeling just a little bit sad. And you said I'm feeling very heartbroken. Something like this. So I would love to do a little example with the group. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you, Joanna. Would someone like to volunteer to kind of model this exercise before we send everybody off into breakout rooms? And so for the modeling, I'll ask somebody to speak a little bit about something that's going on with them, and I will do my best to provide some empathy and just for the sake of kind of modeling the exercise. Danny Rukin says, sure, great. Can we unmute Danny?
Yep, Danny's unmuted now.
Hi, Danny.
Okay. Hi,
Thanks so
Eva.
much for volunteering.
Thank you.
And tell me a little bit about what's on your mind. What's alive in you right now?
Well, usually I don't volunteer because I want to hear, but I do have something that, because we're all doing the stay home, I work from home, and I have, there's just a lot more noise around. So I have a lot of frustration and annoyance and anger with the extra noise that's going on. And then particularly noisy neighbors in their backyards. And then I have a lot of judgment around, go back to your malls, go back to your stadiums, go back to your, you're not contributing to society anyway, like we are. That's it. And I could use some help.
Sure. I'm hearing that frustration, and it sounds like you're feeling like pretty overwhelmed and really wanting some peace and some ease. Is that it?
Yes. Feels better already. Yes.
And I'm hearing kind of around the judgments of other people, and kind of maybe wishing you had a little more collaboration in your activism. Is that part of it? Is kind of like really wanting more people to be kind of helping the movement?
Yes. And just feeling added frustration that they're just, taking up oxygen, again, judgments, and they could be helping the animals, they could be helping the homeless. I mean, they just could be helping instead of bugging me, instead of destroying my serenity. Yeah.
So, yeah, really, really wanting that peace. And it sounds like I can really hear that longing for just like collaboration and like I said, and like care for and kindness for the animals, and just like that for more people.
Yeah, and then add on, I feel so understood, Ava, I really do. And then add on, I just wish they would be more considerate, which then adds into my whole thing around, like our activism, like get outside of yourself, notice the impact that you're having on me. And when I have tried to reach out, and this is where NVC comes in, I don't get the response that I want, which is, wow, I really hear that you have a need for, fill in the blank. and I can if you want, but they're not reciprocating in kind. And then I go, I would never respond that way. Blah. What's wrong with this world? Blah blah blah.
So really wanting some consideration and wanting to maybe some safety in those interactions. So
yeah, it feels really unsafe when they come back with snappy, then move if you don't like it, that kind of thing. When I go out of my way to be super like, hey, and I don't know if you know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That's a very vulnerable kind of thing to do, to talk in the big group, though I know you're very used to talking in big crowds, but maybe not so personally. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Would folks like to kind of reflect what they heard there, what they noticed? And actually, Danny, let me know how that was for you. What was that conversation like also? That's amazing just to be heard. That's wonderful to hear. Any other comments? Anything else that anybody noticed? That I like said back some of what I heard. I noticed a sense of maybe relief kind of at the beginning of the conversation. Yeah, it can feel really good to be heard. It can feel really good to kind of have a space where you can talk and just have the listening. And I noticed that he said, like Beth says, kind of acknowledging and validating what Danny said. Rasa says, tried to understand the feelings. Yeah, tried to really kind of wrap my mind around which feelings were. I noticed that Danny said a lot of feelings words. There were a lot that came exactly as feelings words: angry, frustrated, and so sometimes it was just a matter of reflecting those exact words. Yeah, I hear that, frustrated. It sounds like you're really feeling frustrated. Or it could be kind of guessing at what the needs were below. When I went to activism, I wasn't sure that that's what it was. I wasn't sure if it was really about is it about like wanting the world to be a better place, wanting things to be kinder to animals, or is it somewhere else? And so that was the guess, and it went well. Danny said that it worked, but it also maybe it couldn't, and then Danny would have hopefully been able to say, I because I know that Danny cares a lot about animals, and so maybe it would have said something like, well, yeah, I do really care about that, but that's not really what's alive right now. It's more of X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I would have clarified, no, it's more like this. And so if that happens, it's not kind of a sign of a failure. You didn't like make a wrong guess. You kind of opened up the conversation to go where it needs to go. Of course, I said what he said, opened up the conversations instead of closing it down, right? It wasn't like, didn't have the effect of sort of changing the subject like a lot of those not empathy things that we talked about at the beginning do. All right, so again, if you don't want to do a breakout room, totally fine. You can drop off the call and just rejoin in a couple minutes. If you would like to do a breakout room, you'll just do that same thing. You'll give everybody about 5 minutes per person, but we'll do 15 minutes in total to give everybody about that amount of time. And I'll ask that you kind of keep your own time. We'll come back around 6:15. And if I can send you little reminders, I will, but try to keep your own time and switch people around for the 5-minute mark. Drop off and talk on your own off.
Cool. So we're going to send people into the breakout rooms in just 1 second here. I just noticed a lot of folks are dropping off. So we're just going to make sure everyone has someone to talk to. Okay. Wow. So many people are leaving. Okay. That's good though, because that means everyone who's staying is going to talk to each other. Alrighty. Looks like we are good to go. Cool. So we'll see you all back here in 15 minutes.
I jumped out of my breakout room.
That's what I thought would happen.
Was that what I was supposed to do too, or?
Yes. I mean, you're welcome to go there if you want, but just want to check in with Francis and Mark that you are here by choice and that you don't want to be put into a breakout room.
We got a handful of people in the waiting room. Should we?
We're going to let them in now. I just wasn't letting
okay.
people in because you had told them to leave and then rejoin.
Oh.
So I didn't want
see.
to like put them in and have them be in the breakouts.
Yeah,
Smart.
Most of the names in the thing I recognize.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Any feedback so far? Am I talking too fast or anything?
Oh, that's good. What are we going to do in here?
Well, for folks who just got let in from the waiting room, we assumed that you were in the waiting room because you left because you didn't want to be put into a breakout room. So if you do want to be put into a breakout room and participate in the exercise, just let me know. You might not be able to unmute yourself, but you can probably type in the chat and just let us know and we'll throw you into a breakout room. And Eva, if you want me to broadcast a message to people, like, do you want me to give them time warnings or?
Yeah, on the 5-minute marks, we can,
Yeah.
Oh, see, Debbie raised her hand. Maybe she wants to go in a breakout room.
Oh, cool. Let's see. I will unmute you, Debbie. What's up?
Hey, oh, I was just busy making dinner. So, what did I do? So I can go in a breakout room. I was just trying to make dinner.
Okay.
So
Cool. I will put you in.
I didn't want to have to feel, sorry, forced to chat while I have kids running around and trying to make dinner. So, and I thought you guys might be back in your session. So you can put me in a breakout room so I can listen or.
What do you think, Eva?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Yeah? Okay, cool. I will
Thanks,
put you into breakout room 4.
I guess it was more like 1 minute after that we sent people off, so we can remind them at
Oh, I have a timer on the
6:06.
breakout rooms. Like it shows me how long
Oh,
they've been
perfect.
for. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Zoom is good that way.
Zoom is good that way.
I can hear the crow that's outside of our house from like 3 different mics right now. It's pretty funny.
We've got 3 different people in the same. Actually, how many people from our house are on this call?
5 people, yeah.
5 people.
How big is the house?
6. 6 humans.
6 humans.
4
6 humans in a
non-humans.
house.
It's 4 bedrooms.
Okay.
And 2 cats and 2 dogs.
10 people.
4 non-humans.
Yeah. They
And
each
then
have their own
family of
room, and then
rats
all the
under
humans, we
house
just
being
share the
determined
living room.
size.
I guess I could.
Helpful, and it definitely doesn't always need to. It doesn't always sound like that formula, but it's a great start. Sometimes we just guess a feeling, or we just guess a need, or we talk about what's important instead of talking about what's the need or the want. It's something. It's just like a lot of things we can learn. We kind of learn with a particular form and can get more flexible over time. When it felt like a great way to meet and reconnect with people. Or second guessing whether giving advice or just listening or holding space or being empathetic. Yeah, doing something that's so habitual, communicating that we have so many habits around, trying to do it a different way can be hugely disorienting and hugely awkward, right? Like, does anybody feel like a little bit awkward in that experience? Couple of hands there. it was, yeah, super awkward to like try to communicate. Michael was there with me in the silent main room. That's definitely awkward. Feel that. And yeah, that's really real, that like it takes kind of a huge amount of vulnerability to try a new way of communicating, because we rely so much on these habits to kind of feel fluid and feel fluent, and I want to really validate that kind of awkwardness. Yeah. And cool. Any kind of any more reflections on what it was like, and what anybody else have that kind of experience of not being sure, or did anybody have make a wrong guess? Did anybody say something that and then get corrected? Or any other reflections on that? A little awkward, need more practice. Yeah, it's definitely something that takes a lot of practice. Can unmute Ariel?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's kind of, I can tell it will take a lot of practice to be able to juggle like honestly presently listening to the person, and also kind of like I guess like processing what they're saying to you in order to like kind of repeat it back to them, you know, because I kind of like I was talking to Stephanie, one of the amazing people in my group, and you know, she was explaining a situation in her life, and you know, I was like listening to her, but I also wanted to be able to like respond to her thoroughly. So I was kind of worried about like, oh gosh, trying to like figure out how to like rephrase it back to her, you know, while also still genuinely listening, because she had a lot of interesting things to say. So it's just about like being present and able to just kind of like pass it back to them.
So it's kind of a lot to juggle all at once, hearing all the content that's happening, and then kind of the feelings and needs that are happening, and then like, what am I going to say, and how sort of an overwhelm of all those different things to juggle. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. This being say kind of too shy even to join. Feel that, and this is a skill set that's super helpful in conflict, right? It's super helpful when we're in a really heated situation, and just like everything, when we practice, we maybe want to practice easy, want to practice situations that aren't so hard, want to practice when it is just like a really low stakes conversation with a friend, and we can maybe be honest and say, yeah, I want to try something new. Like, if it sounds weird, please forgive me. And yeah, George says kind of tough. And yeah, I definitely feel the Sabina, feel the kind of the weight of spending all day online. So no offense. Also, so someone's mad at you, it's really hard to be empathetic. That's very real. And a lot of times we talk about learning the skills to kind of show empathy to ourselves, to kind of use these skills to maybe give ourselves some empathy. And so sometimes if we can get really good at giving ourselves some empathy, we can be a little bit more present, a little bit more able to give empathy first if somebody's once the energy is higher, if somebody's a little bit mad. All right. Well, I'm gonna Aiden, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking about Ariel's comment about like how it can be like, yeah, just like tracking everything someone's saying, and the sort of founder of this nonviolent communication theory that Eva mentioned at the beginning, Marshall Rosenberg, had he on this point emphasized like he would interrupt someone after, he wouldn't let anyone say more than 40 words at a time. He would interrupt to reflect. So like not interrupting and adding his thing, but he would always just say, hey, can I just like check that I'm understanding what you've said so far, so that he wouldn't have to track more than like small pieces at a time. So that's always an option. And it doesn't feel like an interruption when someone is like reflecting back what I'm saying to me, right? So.
Right, it's kind of that idea of the spotlight. When the spotlight is kind of on the person whose feelings are being talked about, then we can really, interrupting doesn't have the effect of showing the spotlight back on me. It doesn't feel so bad. Thank you for that. There. Cool. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and thank you for the book recommendation. That's great. And we will go back to our little presentation here. We already did that. Okay. So those of you who have studied a little bit of nonviolent communication know that we often talk about these four, not just feelings and needs, but these four different areas called observations, feeling, needs, and requests. And that kind of makes the formula for kind of speaking in NVC. And so we come up with, as an exercise, we come up with statements that talk about observations, feelings, needs, and requests in the pursuit of the question, what would make life more wonderful for us? And those are Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's words. When we talk about observations, we talk about clear descriptions of what happened at a particular time. And some people say that that's something, just something that can be like something really objective, something that can be captured with a video camera. The kind of lineage that we're working with acknowledges that not everything can be captured with a video camera. Some things are personal history, some things are kind of societal history, that and they still kind of count as observations. So we're going to include, for the purposes of observations, things that happened, some things that could have been captured by a video camera, things that happen inside of us, and things that are kind of systematic, or systemic, rather. And the observations don't live in evaluations and judgments and rights and wrongs and goods and bads and shoulds. They aren't about kind of our interpretation of what happened. They're just about what's kind of real, what's non-controversial about a situation. And so I talk about three different types of observations. External might be that something very simple, like in my example earlier, that I am on the phone with my mom for half an hour and I speak twice. Maybe that's my kind of external observation. And the internal one might be that I am feeling that, like, when that happens, I'm very, very distracted. Like my mind is elsewhere, say. Now that's real, right? That could be very, very true. It's not something that could be captured with a video camera, that my mind is elsewhere, but it's something that I can know and know it well enough, know it to be true. And then systemic could be something kind of bigger. It could be about, like, there's a power differential between me and my mom. Maybe she is like, if I'm a child, maybe she's like supporting me. Maybe there's maybe she has the ability to I mean, you know, even without material, like the parent-child dynamic is one with power. So there's kind of the systemic observation at play, and so the fact that we are mother and daughter could be an observation in and of itself. And yeah, so those are kind of examples of these three different levels of observations. And so on top of observations, we have requests. And we talk about requests being in this clear, specific, and positive action language. So the requests are about asking someone to do something rather than asking them to avoid something. We also talk about demands, and demands being something that is very different from a request and can't really coexist with a request. And we can think about the kind of most extreme example of a request being something like a mugging. You know, if someone has a gun and they say, "Give me all your money," that's clearly a demand. It's not okay for you to say no. There are going to be consequences if you say no. And we can also acknowledge that, like, sometimes the words that it sound like a request. If somebody had a gun to you and they said, "Would you give me $20? That might be the language of a request, but it still clearly is a demand. We must go to lunch sometime in a time that isn't socially distanced, say. That has the language of a demand and could have the energy of a request. So there is really, like, kind of a context and energy that's really important to keep in mind when we talk about requests via demands. Tone of voice even could do it. The kind of the question that comes up at the end might do more to communicate an actual request via demand. So when we talk about requests in the kind of NVC framework, communication framework. We often often people are very, very focused on the solution. They want the thing that they want out of the conversation. They would say, hey, I would really like you to turn your music down. Would you be willing to do that? And maybe if we're in a heated conversation, if we're in a situation where it's a little more delicate, the first requests aren't going to be for a solution. They're going to be maybe for a reflection. Would you let me know would you let me know what you heard me say, so that I can be sure that I can be sure that it came across right. And so it's like a request for a reflection, a request that someone tell you what it was that they heard. A response. How do you feel hearing what I said? Sometimes people say things like, oh, you probably think I'm really dumb now. You know, if you're feeling really like vulnerable after kind of sharing a lot. Oh, you must think I'm crazy. These are often, if we hear something like that, that's often a kind of a masked request for a response for how do you feel now? Having heard, I'd really like to know what's going on with you now. And then a solution, a strategy might be another request. So maybe asking to turn music down, asking to listen to me for a while. The actual strategy might also definitely counts as a request. So early we asked that you kind of come up with something in those groups to practice empathy. We asked that you come up with something that dealt with another person. And so if that's the kind of stimulus that you chose to talk about, you can reuse that same one, or you can choose something else. But I'd love to give you a few minutes now to kind of practice doing that formula. And this won't be breakout room, so no need to drop off the call if you can't do a breakout room. But if you're able to, we'll take just about 3 minutes or so to practice writing, maybe just writing this out. What might observation, feeling, need, request be for the situation that you have in mind? And so as an example, when we started the call, I talked about maybe my mom doesn't speaks a lot when we're on the phone, and so the observation there might be like, and this could be directed towards the other person. So the observation might be, hey mom, I noticed that we've been on the phone for a while, and I've had something on my mind that I'd really like to talk about. That might be, well, I guess there's kind of an implicit request there. Let me try again. Just to be kind of rote to, this might not feel very natural. Again, this is practice, but observation. I noticed we've been on the phone for a half an hour and I haven't really talked much. Feeling. I feel, right now I'm feeling pretty anxious and a little bit annoyed. A need. I'm really wanting connection with you, and I'm really wanting to kind of use this time to express, to be heard. And a request might be, first, would you let me know what you heard me say? Might be the first one. And kind of for the purpose of the exercise, we can sort of jump to a strategy type request. So would you mind letting me, would you mind listening to me for a while, talk about something that that matters to me? So these might be kind of the 4 things. And so yeah, we'll just take a few minutes now to write. If you'd like to share in the chat what it is you're writing, there's absolutely no pressure to do that. Again, these are, I want to really acknowledge that, like, we're talking probably about some personal stuff. And so if you feel called to kind of put those in the chat without any, no context, you don't need to let us know what the relationship is that it's in. But if you'd like to, you can share that in the chat. And if you would like to kind of journal on your own or write it down and not send, that's a great kind of use of this time. And the ones that do go in the chat, we can kind of talk about a little bit. So I'll just give another minute or so here, in case folks need a little bit more time. And if anyone feels called to share their practice, you can either put it in the chat or you can put a star in the chat and we can unmute you so you can speak if you'd like. Now we'll stop the share so I can see you all. How are we doing? Do we need more time on this? A couple nods. Manu says it's awesome, but hard to be vulnerable and show our weaknesses. So it's definitely real, hard to, and intensely vulnerable to tell somebody what's really going on with us. And again, sometimes the practice can kind of be in those really low stakes situations. Can be can be empathy with someone who's not in conflict with us. It can be in very low level conflicts. These skills can kind of be a toe in the water type of thing. Anybody feeling brave? Want to share what their exercise looked like? Well, if you would like to, we will have a little bit of time at the end, and I'm going to put us back. Oh, we got Lawrence. What would you like to share with us, Lawrence? Can we unmute Lawrence?
Yeah, so I hear that your team is under pressure to set a date for this analysis to be complete. I'm feeling apprehensive about providing a specific date based on the concerns I have provided. I need to have a meeting with the requester to address the scope concerns. And I request that if we put a date down, that we put a 3-month date out, but put a risk as well.
All right, so we got all the different portions, and I liked that the kind of start was with empathy. I liked that it sounded really professional. There was nothing kind of about that seemed like too vulnerable for work. Would you remind me what the need was?
I need to have a meeting with the requester. We need to have a different discussion, but we need to bring other people into the conversation.
Cool. That sounds totally great for the context. That sounds like a very work appropriate thing to say. And in the kind of NVC framework, we would talk about, we would name kind of one of those universal human needs. So the need might be for efficiency, or might be for not knowing the situation, hard to guess, but might be for kind of integrity in the work, or something like that. Might not be necessary to name in the context, because of course you know your situation
Sure.
best.
I'll go take a look at that list of needs. I knew there was something that I made a little bit more like technical.
Sure. Thank you
But
for.
the
Sorry,
interesting thing is, when I shared with my group earlier, I realized that I liked going on, and like it was almost like I liked being right about how I escalated the situation rather than just staying cool headed in NVC.
kind of wanting you notice like a desire to like kind of stay in like the indignance of it, that like the being right and the other person being wrong.
Yeah, like I feel like you're not listening to me based on my concern, and I'm gonna keep fighting that until I hear you tell me that you're listening to me.
Yeah, that's that sounds like somebody who really needs some empathy, that really needs to like know that they've been heard. And that's even in a work situation, saying, could you just let me know what you heard? I just want to make sure that I got it right. Like maybe the request for reflection is something that could be really useful there.
I like that.
Thanks for sharing that, Lawrence.
Yeah, you bet.
See, Danny said that too. I hope I'm saying this right. Bijou, could we unmute Bijou?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, so just a sentence or two for context. My dad just found out that he's got diabetes, and so I was telling my parents about the several different documentaries, but namely What the Health. And I've checked with them several different times, and they have not watched it yet. However, they're doing every other thing that everybody else. So this is really good. This was really great for me. So this is what I came up with. I noticed that you haven't watched the documentary What the Health yet. I feel curious about your resistance, and I feel scared about Dad's health. I have a need to share information that would help Dad get healthy or stay healthier. Would you be willing to watch it with me?
Well, yeah, it sounds like kind of hit all the health and the not having watched it, the kind of the feelings, the curiosity, and the anxiety, and the need, and needs are tricky ones, and the need might be, to me, the need sort of felt a little bit more like a strategy, like the need might be to contribute, and the need might be for health, even for the thing that you're really caring about is like health for your loved ones, and sometimes that really kind of spending some time just with that like affirming that like I really have a need for you to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I'd love to share some information, and would you is kind of how it might look in the NVC framework, and that all sounds really really great and really difficult to kind of have to sit with and kind of know that there's that danger.
Yeah, the need piece was actually pretty difficult because then I started feeling selfish, like I was making about me. Like, I need you to be vegan, like because I feel like that's what they think I'm saying, which maybe I am, but yeah.
So kind of noticing some self-judgments in there, and surprisingly, Marshall Rosenberg would say that he would say these very radical things, like, I never do anything for anybody else. I only would do something to meet my own needs. And he was an extremely compassionate, giving, generous person. And the kind of paradoxical thing about that is that by really tuning into our own needs, which could be for someone else's health, like I have a need for everyone to be well, to be taken care of, to have a need to contribute. But by really being in touch with our own needs, we can be extremely generous and extremely selfless sometimes. And so there is this kind of paradox around like, oh, selfish is bad, and still towards kind of growing towards this like authenticity and being able to really tell people what's real about our lives. We can kind of be extremely like not selfish about that.
So I just thought of one. So the need was what I wrote, because I was feeling selfish. I said, I have a need to share information that would keep you healthy. But really the need is, I have a need for him to live for a long time. I mean, I have a need for him to meet my grandchildren, or his which aren't born yet, but like longevity.
Right. Yeah. All sorts of really important things like related to him being healthy and being around. And I think that sounds very, very vulnerable to kind of bring that to someone, and very kind of, true. So even if the strategy is one that they don't like, or that will ultimately say no to. The kind of experience of being real about what's needed can be so connecting, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So we are just about to the end here, and I want to pretty quickly go over one more piece of content. And so I'm wondering if folks can kind of think of, we're talking about kind of being very vulnerable with people and really letting people know what's real for us. And there are obviously times when that's difficult. We kind of talked about awkwardness as one, and that is real. And are there others? Like, are there other kind of situations that we can think of where being true to kind of our feelings and needs might make something really hard? It might not really be available to us to make requests. And I hear Lawrence need for consistency of the work. That's a really beautiful need. Anybody have any ideas about what might be I'm trying to talk to someone not wearing a mask can definitely be difficult, but thinking very general, like what kinds of things about a relationship might make it really difficult to kind of be able to be vulnerable, be able to talk about things that are real for you. Any ideas when trust has been damaged, of course, as ignorance of the other person? What about if somebody is, like I mentioned my mom, the parent-child dynamic. What about you care about someone a lot and fear their disapproval? That's definitely true. If you're mad, if they're mad, feeling insecure about oneself. Yeah, definitely feeling insecure could be there. And I think like economic insecurity might be a really important aspect of that. Thinking about like maybe like a boss, maybe a landlord. If you can tell they're not being present, yeah, if you can tell they're not really there. If you're fear of judgment, fear of harm, fear of some kind of like consequence, right, to doing to having shown somebody what's real for you, and that kind of gets to power, right, to a lot of power dynamics that could kind of get in the way of these things, and isn't a whole ton of time for this, but I'm going to talk just a tiny bit about microaggressions, which are I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas about what microaggressions are. In this particular framework, I'm going to use this particular definition, and that's words, actions, or structures which send a message to an individual or a group that they don't belong. And that's very, very broad. I'm using a really, really broad example definition of microaggressions because there are this sort of framework works for any time that you've maybe stepped on a nerve that you didn't quite realize was there. And maybe we'll get into that, but if I'd love to hear maybe examples of these, because I know that a lot of you have experience with them. I know that it's something that is talked about pretty frequently. But if you'd like to, as I speak, kind of put some examples of what you think of with microaggressions in the chat, because some of the like really most delicate situations that we need to communicate in might deal with power dynamics. And so we put this pyramid here again to kind of talk about those three levels of observations. Those sometimes an observation might be external. It might be, oh, I know that you told me that I couldn't take Friday off. That's an observation. And the internal one might be all sorts of feelings. It might be also all sorts of might be an experience of poverty. It might be kind of a real experience of not knowing if you're going to be able to make rent or going to be able to put food on the table. And the systemic might be about kind of it might be the statistics that I mean, that could still be internal, but the societal impacts of a particular way a group of people is treated could be a systemic observation. And when we talk about empathy and we talk about microaggressions, we talk about kind of the ways that people might step on nerves, not knowing that they've done something that that is perceived as a microaggression, perceived as a way to make a particular person or group feel like they don't belong. Empathy is really important. It's developing these skills of empathy are really important for a lot of different situations, and here's kind of one of them. And so we put, and it can be really, really hard to like not emote a lot if somebody, like, say you say something that's like accidentally perceived as like racist or sexist or something. That feels not good to be told. And so you might be very tempted to explain. It's like, oh, I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant. That's not who I am. You might, and that's like we talked about at the very beginning, that's a way to really have the effect of putting the spotlight back on yourself when someone who is harmed is telling you about that harm. Other ways that might kind of be tempting are to apologize, to say, I'm so sorry, I feel so bad, oh my gosh, that's just so awful of me. Again, a way that you're sort of asking the person to comfort you now. Definitely a way to kind of put the spotlight back on yourself. And so, as tempting as it can be to apologize very effusively, we do these. Empathy is very important to lead with. And of course, minimizing. I think you're overreacting. I don't think anybody else sees it that way. It's not that big of a deal. Calm down. Of course, is not empathy, and is not kind of a authentic way to be communicating with someone who might feel harmed. And we say that, yeah, well, again, holding the spotlight on someone's feelings and needs when they're coming to you with a problem or coming to you with an experience of harm. Giving empathy, apologizing once there is empathy, once you actually understand once it's very clear that you understand what the harm is, then and only then is it really like time for an apology, because now you understand what it is that you're apologizing for. Offering not to repeat the behavior at that point is also, of course, great. And explaining the intention is kind of tricky. It's sort of on the don't side first thing, because it's kind of the first thing we want to jump to, and sometimes people might have curiosity and might invite you to explain the intention after a harm happens. So that's kind of a lot of information all at once, and we are just about the end here. We have a few more minutes though, so I'd love to share these resources. Feel free to take a screenshot now if you'd like to know. baynbc.org is the organization that I trained with, and that Aiden, who is here and developed this training with me, train with. And Marshall Rosenberg's book, kind of the very first one of Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, are great resources that I would like to share. And I will stop my sharing now. And would love to hear if there are any questions. Again, if you'd like to put a star in the chat, or if you'd like to just ask a question right there in the chat. Also love to hear reflections or feedback or whatever is on your mind right now. And thank you so much for coming. It was really great for me to be able to share this stuff with you all. I really think that this stuff has a lot of value. Amanda, would you like to be unmuted to ask a question?
Yes. So when we did the little breakout room, I noticed that I tend to, when I'm listening to somebody, say something, I try to think, like, put myself in their shoes, so be empathetic, but then like say like, oh, like if they're having a bad day, like, oh yeah, like I've been through the same, a similar situation, and so I can understand how you're feeling, or I feel like I can. So is that not what we should be doing? Or I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, is that appropriate or not appropriate to say, like, oh, I can, yeah, I've been there, or, that kind of thing. That's my question.
Sure. So kind of noticing the impulse to relate and say, oh yeah, I know I've been there. And I think we probably all experienced times when that felt really good to hear that somebody had the same experience as us. And I think kind of in this framework, we would really want that to happen kind of after empathy, after identifying feelings and needs and reflecting and making sure that I got it. And then, oh yeah, I've actually experienced the same thing, might be really great. And again, it's about like really holding the spotlight on the other person. And so maybe been there is kind of a way to quickly show a relation, a way to relate without kind of bringing it right back onto me, so that now I can talk about my experience of that thing, if that makes sense. And okay, there was a question about empathy with non-vegans. Let me see, Bailey asked, how do we exercise empathy when having conversations with non-vegans? I actually think that AV is a really great way to practice nonviolent communication. Like, just like go to a cube and just try, just feelings and needs the whole time. Be like, okay, so you're feeling kind of angry because you really wish that we didn't have such bad, it's something that, you know, it's a muscle. It's that really needs to be worked on, needs to be strengthened, and kind of feeling like it can feel really alienating, obviously, and kind of working on those feelings, identifying those feelings, saying, wow, I feel really alienated, and kind of empathizing with yourself first. I feel really angry when I see my mom eating meat, eating animals. Empathizing kind of ourself first can kind of help to create enough space to give empathy to someone who we have a particularly hard time empathizing with. See if there are any other questions that I missed. Are there cute videos I can watch where participants use empathy skills we learned? That's a really great idea, Bailey. I want to like go look at the cube videos at like the Earthling Ed types and see, and like point out the times that they, because I'm sure that they do use empathy a bit, and it would be, that's great. But no, I don't know of any videos like that. That would be great. George asks how I'm feeling after the bike ride. I biked 100 miles 2 weeks ago, and I had never biked even hardly 20 miles before. And you know, I actually wasn't feeling so bad. A little bit of pain, but hardly any. It was surprising. We biked to Petaluma. I never understand how you feel 100%. Yeah, of course, we can never quite know. 2 days after, I felt a little bit better. You know, the next time I got on a bike, I was like, ooh, that's a little bit of pain, but it wasn't so bad. It was surprisingly okay. I did not keep up with the people I was biking with, though. I will not lie about that. All right. Well, if no more questions, it was really wonderful to see your faces and to hear from you all. I hope that came away with something kind of useful. Really would encourage you to kind of keep looking into this stuff if it feels useful to you. A lot of videos from Marshall Rosenberger on YouTube that I've gotten a lot of value out of. The book is very useful, and just seeing those actual conversations on YouTube videos. If they're not AV, they're not outreach conversations, but just searching Marshall Rosenberg on YouTube and kind of seeing how he approached those conversations, I felt very kind of educated by. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for being here. You can email info@liberationconference.com if you would like the slides we just learned. Thank you, Joanna. And yeah, and we will close off the meeting now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eva. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Oh, bye, Jose. I'm in Chicago too.